Good morning, Dan and Amy. Are you ready for this?
What now? I don't know if I can handle it.
Nicholas Kristof, writing in the New York Times. Nicholas Kristof, man of the left. When Trump was right and many Democrats were wrong. What?
Wait, huh?
Trump has been demanding for months that schools reopen, and in that he seems to have been largely right. Schools, especially elementary schools, do not appear to have been major sources of coronavirus transmission, and remote learning is proving to be a catastrophe for many low-income children. Yet America is shutting schools, as New York City just did yesterday again.
Which is stupid because the positivity rate in the school is 0.167.
Even as it allows businesses like restaurants and bars to operate. What are our priorities? It only took Nick Kristof about 8 months to come to that question. One we've been hotly debating from the outset of the lockdowns in the spring. But it is a momentous occasion when somebody from the New York Times says when Trump was right and many Democrats wrong, and that New York Times actually allows it to be published these days. The overwhelming evidence and consensus about in-person education, and yet the lockdowns continue. The remote learning persists. Maybe Nick Kristof will be the Pied Piper of elites in America. We'll see. For more on those elites in America, we're pleased to be joined by Lance Morrow, contributing editor of City Journal, the Henry Grunwald Senior Fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, essayist at Time for many years, and author of the soon-to-be-released God and Mammon, Chronicles of American Money. Lance, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Delighted to be there.
You had this piece in City Journal about elite opinion and how it's never wrong. And Nick Kristof is saying that an elitist himself, that it was wrong in the case of school closures. How do we square this?
I read that this morning and was amazed. The story of the New York Times and its intolerance for any dissenting opinions, and particularly in the James Bennett case, where it forced out the opinion editor simply because he allowed an op-ed by Senator Cotton to be published, didn't prepare me for Kristof this morning. That's really quite surprising, and I hope it means that they may be having second thoughts. Particularly, I mean, these are the people who put out the 1619
rewriting
project.
of American history. Well, they want the kids to get back in school so they can learn that the true founding of the nation was in 1619.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, the reason I wrote this column, or what I was thinking about in this column, was that for all of my rather long life, I have been aware of this phenomenon, even way before I was born, and all during the 1930s. Winston Churchill, for example, in Britain was regarded as a crackpot and an extremist by all the elites and the fashionable opinion makers and so on. When I was a kid, Dwight Eisenhower, who was only the guy who ran the biggest military operation in the history of the world to invade Europe and defeat the Third Reich, was regarded condescendingly as something of not exactly an idiot, but a dullard and a man who played golf and read Zane Grey westerns. And then years later, when I was writing for Time magazine during the Reagan administration, Reagan himself was regarded, the universal opinion on the left and among these fashionable people was that he was an idiot.
Amiable dunce, to quote Clark Clifford, right?
Exactly, amiable dunce, and he was no such. I mean, my father knew him, and plenty of people, who I knew him, and knew perfectly well that he was no such thing, not even close. That he was, but what interests me is the way that people talk, and particularly people on the left who come out of the academy and work in the media and so on, the way that they talk themselves into these narratives, and they persuade themselves. The latest, truly egregious example is defund the police. And it's amazing to me that they keep churning out these they project these narratives, which often prove to be not only false, but disastrously false in the formation of policy and responses to problems.
And Lance, another one that's popping up is, President Trump's not conceding, so he's threatening our democracy.
Yeah. I mean, it just these, and it gets to be. I think that in the age we live in, which is the age one can't say enough of smartphones and 24/7 agitations in media and so on. In this age, when the fake and the true are all coming at you on the screens 24/7, it becomes really alarming to have these to realize that the public discourse is so saturated with these vivid false narratives, and of course, the left is not the only people who do it, but it is particularly vivid on the left.
You write in your piece, if you toss ignorance and arrogance and snobbery into a blender, you're going to get a poisonous concoction. And you suggest that after witnessing a vote of now 75 million Americans for Trump and a few more for Biden, everyone would wish to proceed with patience and care, and above all with that virtue now all but extinct in American politics, humility. It was interesting you chose that word because it called to mind what Whittaker Chambers said in Witness: there can be no true humility and no true compassion where there is no courage. And it seems to me that we need to take one step back. We are a nation of cowards in so many ways, and cowards are incapable of humility or compassion.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked that Whittaker Chambers quote, because Chambers was an interesting case of going against I don't know if your listeners beyond a certain age or younger than a certain age, I'm sure they don't know anything about the Whittaker Chambers Alger Hiss case, but that was another example of fashionable opinion siding entirely with Alger Hiss, whereas the truth was the reverse, that Alger Hiss was in fact the communist agent that Whittaker Chambers said he was. And but Chambers was that's a great quote about humility. I think that courage and humility are exactly the point here, and something has gotten really turned upside down in this country in terms of our sense of virtue, our sense of what the relationship of the individual to the country is, and identity politics, for example, is a really sets up a perverse relationship between the individual and the country, and it's a very uncivilized relationship. The identity politics is not good for the country. It's very bad for the country, and I'm sorry to see the country in the grip of this stuff, and I don't know whether you can see the way out, but it's very discouraging. Of course, this is an abnormally tumultuous kind of year, and so it's difficult to get people to calm down and start thinking about things like humility. But
he is Lance Morrow, contributing editor of City Journal, the Henry Grunwald Senior Fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, and an essayist at Time for many years. His soon-to-be-released new book, God and Mammon, Chronicles of American Money. Lance Morrow, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Delighted. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of Nature's fruits and vegetables in a capsule, changing the world one life at a time.
Well, I'm a Lyft driver, so I'm on the road a lot. It keeps me very focused, I notice. When you're on the road,